Hi guys, it's Steph from IDRIVEACLASSIC, and today I'm back in something very different. I've been teasing you all on Facebook this morning, well I guess yesterday because today's Sunday, and I'm in a Kia Pride from 1991. Now if you've watched my Festival of the Unexceptional video, you will have seen this Kia Pride before because Jude was there. It was the first time we'd ever met, and Jude said, if you ever want to test drive this car, let me know. And I said, actually Jude, I'm coming down to London for the Christian Dior exhibition. So we've met up today in Wimbledon and we've done this amazing video, which I'm so sure that you're going to love. So let's head off and we'll have a look around the car and we'll start the video.
I tell you what, it was well worth coming all the way to London to review this Kia Pride today, and I'm certain it's probably going to be one of the most interesting cars that I've driven and that I've shown you guys around for some time. Now let's talk about Kia itself. So in 2019 in the UK, you'll see a Kia everywhere, and with powerful marketing campaigns like the 5-year warranty and selling cars at competitive prices, it may seem strange to think that there was once a time when Kia was a quirky choice in Britain. So as we have a look around this car, and I'll show you the inside, the outside and a cheeky peek under the bonnet, I'll tell you a little bit about Kia, and as we drive I'll tell you all about the Kia Pride itself. So Kia is South Korea's second largest car manufacturer, but they didn't start as such. So when the company was founded in December 1944, they manufactured steel, tubing and bicycle parts, and then they went on to produce South Korea's first domestic bicycle in 1951. Later on through the 50s, the manufacturer started building Honda licensed kind of small motorcycles, and then through into the early 60s they started making Mazda licensed trucks, and then Mazda cars in the early 70s. And to kind of keep up with that, the company opened its first automotive assembly parts in the early 70s and built the small Brisa range of cars until 1981, which was forced by politics and dictatorship into creating a consolidation. Now it's interesting that one of the little sidetracks that I'm going to go on here is it's interesting that other countries had different problems, you know, for their automotive industry throughout the 70s. We had things like strikes, and Kia had things like dictatorships. So they changed tact and they weren't really put off by that, and they gave up on passenger cars and swapped over to focusing on light trucks. And their first step back into the automotive industry was when they produced several Mazda-derived vehicles for export into foreign market, and I believe it was a collaboration with Ford, and it included this exciting Kia Pride, which had been based on the Mazda 121. Now if you're watching from the US, you might be saying, hey, I don't know it as that. You might know it as the Ford, I believe I pronounce it Festiva. But again, it's all pretty much the same. So in 1992, Kia branded vehicles started being sold in the US and were sold from 4 dealerships in Oregon. And so they started in Oregon and they had a strategy. And to be honest, that is something that I think Kia have done really well, is they have created a strategy, worked to it and followed it very well, and they did it with the US market as well. So the way they did it was they said, we'll start with 4 dealerships in Oregon and then we'll expand out one state at a time, which was a great plan because by 1995 they had over 100 dealerships across 30 states, which is incredible really, because if you think about America, Americans really buy into the American brands. So for them, seeing something unknown like a Kia, it must have been a massive thing to take on. So everything so far is going well for Kia. Everything's good. They're doing well in the US. Things are starting to crack in the UK. And then the Asian financial crisis of the mid-late 90s happens, and Kia declared bankruptcy in 97, and in 98 it reached a deal with Hyundai, who acquired a majority share in the company, and interestingly I thought outbid Ford, who'd been interested in trying to get hold of Kia since the mid-late 80s. And today Hyundai is still the largest shareholder in Kia, but their share has now dropped to around a third of the value of the company. Now continuing on with their strategy, since 2005 Kia have focused on growing their presence in the European market. However, their US division remains strong, and in fact the reliability of Kia was ranked top in the US in 2016, the first non-luxury car manufacturer to achieve this since 1989. Not bad going for a company which probably only about 30 years ago was a bit of a quirky choice in Britain. So before I take this car out, I wanted to have a chat with the owner, Jude, who you may have seen on the Festival of Unexceptional video, but if you haven't, Jude's going to tell us a little bit about why he's picked this Kia Pride. And can you believe it? Fun little fact for you, you may have noticed the learner stickers. He's actually learning to drive in this. In my opinion, a very good choice.
For those of you with a good memory who saw my Festival of the Unexceptional video, you might remember this car because it was owned by Jude. Now, I thought I'd have another catch up with Jude, especially if you've not seen Festival of the Unexceptional, which you really should, by the way, because it was a good video, and just ask Jude a few questions. So Jude's first of all going to tell us why he picked a Kia.
Right, so it's an unusual car to pick. I mean, not many people have even heard of them or were aware that Kia were selling cars so early on. But I picked one actually mainly because there was an identical Kia Pride to this, and I mean the same spec, colour, everything, which lived locally to me, and it kind of caught my eye. I saw it driving around. Then I think it was scrapped or something, and I kind of looked into Kia Prides a bit further, and I saw that actually a lot rarer than I thought, and I was kind of looking for one on the classifieds on and off, but because they are so rare, none really popped up until I left a note on this one, and the elderly owner called back and he said he was giving up driving at the grand age of 97, and I bought it a few months back and I'm loving it. You know, it's quirky. Not many people have them in the car world, and I think I'm one of the only people kind of in the car group to have one. So it's something different and it's great to drive, and it's got lots of character. Learning to drive in an older car is, I think, a lot more fun. If anything, it's actually easier because you've got better visibility. It's smaller, like a shoebox, and it's easier. Like the clutch is nice and light. It's just everything's quite simple. Of course, no parking sensors. Not that you need it because it's so small. And if anything, one thing that is a bit tricky is the fact it's got non-power steering. But again, the size of the car makes it a lot easier when parking. And I think it's just something different from the usual Corsa or Fiesta, what people usually learn to drive in at my age. But so it really stands out.
Jude told me that this gearbox was going to be a little bit different to drive on, and actually I found it quite easy to get my head around. So I'll show you how it is. So you go down, foot on the clutch, so that's up into first, so there's not much travel into first there, but when we come down into second, you'll see it goes all the way down, almost a bit like when you go into reverse, come back into neutral. We go into third, again short travel, and come down into fourth, again quite a bit of travel there, and straight over and round, and that takes you into reverse. So yes, an easy little gearbox to get my head around. I was expecting something a little bit harder because Jude said it was going to be a little bit to get my head around, but actually it all seems pretty straightforward so far. I had to show you this really weird thing, and I only discovered it because at the end of the review Jude opened the door and there was this noise, and I said, what is that noise? Have I left the lights on? What is it? Is it because we've taken the seatbelt off? No, have a listen to this. So that noise is a little warning noise, and it's basically to tell you that you've left the key in the ignition when you've opened the door. How clever is that? I thought I'd give you guys a bit of a visual of what I can see as the driver. Now, this feels a little bit more modern than what I was expecting. So you've got, I mean, I'm quite impressed that it's got a rev counter. I love that it's printed there, unleaded fuel only, like you might suddenly forget when you're out driving. You've got a trip clock, you've got your speedo, and you've obviously got your fuel gauge there. Now, it's all very well laid out. I'll show you some of the other bits that I can see. You've obviously got your indicators, and you've got all your wipers, and then just here everything is pretty standard. So here you've got a digital clock, which I absolutely love, and then you've just got all your panels here. Now, for the age of the car, this feels quite advanced actually, and also I love this. Look at this. This is, let me just zoom in and show you this. This is a Kia tape player. How cool is that? I mean, it's little accessories like this that I absolutely love in old cars when they haven't been changed. So if you can see just what I'm seeing there, so the light is very strange today and it keeps throwing on my camera work. And also another little thing that I love, let me just show you, is that it's got a horn button on each side of the steering wheel. So I guess you wouldn't have to take your hand off. So let's have a listen to see how she sounds. That is absolutely hilarious. Now, I think it's high time that we started this lovely little Korean car up and took her out for a test drive. Now, I always love a little quirky feature on a car. So can you see that? It's got Kia printed on the key, and this key is very small. I don't know what I expected, but I was fumbling around with the keys and Jude said to me, no, it's the little key. So as you can see, very small key for a very small car. So we'll start the car up. We'll pop it in, there we go. And we'll start the car up. So when I start it up, it's just your general lights on the dash there. I can see we've got oil, we've got the battery light on, we've got a few other bits and pieces on, but everything looks to be fine. And of course the digital clocks come on, so it's telling me that it's 11:30 in the morning. Now we'll start that up. As you can see, and probably hear as well, the car sounds amazing, and also it's very quiet. So I'm going to stop this video now, I'm going to belt up, and we're going to take her out on a test drive and see what she's like on the road. Now, I have been blown away by this car. It's totally different from what I expected. I think I expected, and I'm going to sound a little bit, I think I'm going to sound a little bit ignorant actually. I think I expected it, because it was a budget car at the time, to be a little bit thrown together, and I wasn't expecting the car that I've been given today. And it's not as though I've been given a concours car, it's not as though I've been given one that's sat in a museum for years. I've been given a car that's been used on the regular. Jude in fact has done, he's only owned it a month actually, and he is a learner driver, so hats off to him, because he's done 700 miles in it in the last month. So I think if it was going to start feeling a little bit kind of rusty around the edges, I think we would have felt it on this drive. Now, the first thing that I've felt about this car is that it is, I think the word I would use is insulated. It feels so quiet, and I don't feel like, so when I drive my Metro, which of the day this probably would have been a comparable match in terms of, you need a small budget car, what do you get? And this feels, and I hate to say it, this actually feels much better made, and I didn't expect that at all, because Kia back in the day wasn't a brand that people really knew about. Oh goodness, I keep doing that. It wasn't really a brand that people knew too much about. It was kind of a bit, you know, it's kind of a bit new to the UK, so some people were a little bit wary of buying into a brand that maybe they hadn't heard of, but thankfully somebody did, because this Kia Pride is beautiful. And to take a play on the name, I would be so proud to own this Kia Pride. It's good fun, it's easy to drive, the visibility is second to none. I'm enjoying it so much. I mean, I don't know what I expected. And a little bit of background for you guys is that when I was growing up, my family had a Kia. And it was back in the days of Kia not necessarily being a big thing. We had, well, it was Kia Asia. It was that weird time where they were kind of sharing. It was one of those weird kind of sharing things, a little bit, you know, like your BMC days was a bit Austin Rovery, and so Kia, Asia, it was all, anyway, we had an Asia Rockster which was sold out of Kia, and then we moved on to the first, the Mark 1 Kia Sedona. So I have come from a family where we have had Kias, and we've embraced them at a time where they haven't necessarily been the most, you know, the forefront of everybody's mind. So it's quite interesting really to take one out from the 90s and have a feel and see what it's like. Now, one of the interesting facts that Jude told me when we were having a look around the car, he was nattering away to me and he said, oh look, you know, it's got the original dealership, this and that, because it has, it's very original, this car, right down to the dealership sticker in the back window, is that, and I thought this was really interesting, and some of you guys may find it interesting too, is that you could have had a 3 or a 5-door version of this car, and the 5 doors were actually slightly longer by a few inches. And when you think about that, that's slightly bonkers, because on a lot of cars, when they make them into, you know, into a 5-door, they just kind of jimmy the doors around a bit and change it in that respect. But Kia weren't selling massive volumes of these, and instead made the two body shells. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. And throughout this video, hopefully I'm going to tell you a few facts that you maybe didn't know about the Kia and the Kia Pride, and hopefully switch you over to loving these as much as, well, certainly Jude does. Now, as I was saying, Kia wasn't really at the forefront of everybody's mind going for a choice, and the Kia Pride, and I have no idea why, because this car is really nice to drive and it feels very well made as well, they weren't a massive seller. So a little bit of background for you, these were made in Seoul in Korea, and they were available in the UK from 1991 all the way up to the year 2000. Now, you could have either had a Mark 1 or a Mark 2 depending on when you bought into the Kia Pride, and with only 22,000 sold over that 9-year period, it probably won't surprise you to know there's not many left. So of the Mark 1s, I believe, and these are on the road figures, and when I talk about these figures that I get them from howmanyleft.com. So it's a bit of a dubious site, but you can get a good feel for how many cars are pretty much out there. Now, it fills me with great sadness to tell you that there aren't many left of these on the road. So if you go for a Mark 1, like Jude has got here, there are only around 25 on the road. There's more on Sawn, of course, but will they see the road again? Who knows? And then of the Mark 2, I think there's around 66 of the Mark 2 left. So, yeah, less than 100 overall. And those numbers are insane, because if you think about it, these cars are available to the year 2000, and it's that idea that I keep banging on about, and I'm going to talk to you about in the Nova video, is that people don't tend to see these low budget cars and these value cars as classics, and we really should, because if we don't start acting quite promptly and saving cars like this, they aren't going to be available for the future, and our only reference point will be either museums or books or videos on YouTube. So yes, I think this car is, honestly, I wish I could get a few more of you guys in here, because this car's exceptional. It deserves so much more than just having so few left on the road. I'm shocked by it, really. It's just incredible. So yeah, less than 100 left on the road, 22,000 sold overall, and a thoroughly, in my opinion, underappreciated car, because driving it today is an absolute pleasure. Now, you may have heard what I was saying there, that it was only available in the UK, and I put that in almost as an asterisk for you there, in that they are still available now. So if you fancy a Kia Pride and you're not too bothered about saying Kia on the front, if you take a small trip to Iran, these are still sold under the, I believe you pronounce it the Saper brand, and they also sell kind of the rebadged 405s, Peugeot 405s as well, and it's actually one of Iran's most popular cars. And I'm not really surprised at that, because it's quite nippy around town, and I wasn't expecting that at all. I thought it was going to be a bit of a grandma shopping trolley, and it's quite nippy around town. Once you get your head around the gearbox, which for me has been quite easy, it's quite easy to drive, and it's great on fuel as well. It's very economical, and I think it stood well in the test of time. Like it's certainly not rotted away as quickly as some of its counterparts on the market. And even though for me the wipers are on the wrong side and I keep messing it up, it's a good car. And I think it's so interesting that countries further afield are still using some of these well-loved designs and still producing them, because it shows that, and it's one of my arguments actually that I always say, cars haven't necessarily, once you strip away all the frills and the glamour, cars haven't really moved on that much at all. So it's quite interesting to hear something like the Kia Pride that was introduced in 1991 still being sold today under the Saper brand in Iran, with pretty much not much modernisation at all. It really does show that these cars were good at the time, and they're still good now. Now, if this design looks a little bit familiar to you and you're thinking of Mazda, you're not entirely wrong. So back in 1987, this car was launched in the UK as the Mazda 121. Now, it gets a little bit murky, because back in the day when cars from places like Asia weren't massive sellers, you would get different manufacturers lumping together and importing together. So I've mentioned about the Asia and the Kia crossover, but there's also the Mazda crossover as well. So this was originally sold as the Mazda 121, and which is what I thought of when I looked at it, to be honest. So it's sold as Mazda 121, and Mazda sold off the design to Kia, and then Kia rebadged it as the Kia Pride. And I find stuff like this really interesting, because I think when we look back at the 50s and 60s, we see a lot of experimentation and people collaborating in the British car industry, and you see mergers of different marks, so things like everybody coming under the British Motor Corporation, into British Leyland, into the Austin Rover Group. And then I guess it was that idea of collaboration and mergers in the 80s and 90s between some of the Asian manufacturers, things like Asia, things like Kia, things like Mazda. And I just think it's so interesting because for them that was obviously their period of change and experimentation, and it's great because we're getting to take out something today that is a key part of that history. And yeah, I feel very privileged, especially with only 25 on the road. Now, I always like to talk about where cars sat in the market and maybe a little bit about the cultural change of things. So when this car came out, it was getting to that time where it was a little bit more normal that families had a second car, or that we were getting to that era of kids getting their first cars, and then maybe not just being bangers from the 60s and 70s, people were getting new cars. Now, to make car ownership, so basically there's a few people that this would have appealed to. Number one is your person on a massive budget but could really do with a car, because in the UK, places that are quite remote, our bus and train services aren't great. They weren't then, they aren't now, and getting a car sometimes is very crucial for people, but for some people on a budget, it's dead basics. I mean, the UK started fiddling around with that idea with things like your base spec Metro, but then you started getting a bit of competition coming in from abroad, things like your Skoda Favorit, things like your base spec AX, and then these cars had their place in that market as your very budget base spec car. And I think it really shows where we've moved on from. So if we look back at my favourite car, the Morris Minor, and we look at what you could get on your, so you would have got standard or deluxe, you wouldn't have even got your sun visors on a standard car at the time, and you wouldn't have even got a heater. Now we skip forward only what feels like a very short space of time in motoring history, and to say that this is your base spec, your budget. I mean, even if you look to the early 80s, I mean, I drive a base spec Metro, and I can tell you in that I had no parcel shelf, I had no glove box, no radio. They basically stripped out everything they could to save some money. No stone was left unturned to bring down the cost of the car. Whereas for me, this feels like not only like a little bit of a starter car, but it doesn't feel as poverty spec as some of its competitors. I mean, you've got all the things in here that you might like to have, things like your stereo, your glove box, your parcel shelf, the little things that maybe we were missing off. These guys were saying, actually, we can compete in that market, and we can deliver, and we can put those features into the car. So this doesn't feel as Spartan as maybe some of its competitors do. And in fact, with its slightly chunky steering wheel, with its nicely laid out dash, it actually feels like a great car, and it feels like a car that a family could have adopted as a second car. I mean, for Jude, it's his first car, and I think anybody that took this car on as their first car, I think it would have been a great choice. It's a lovely car to drive, and yeah, I'm very impressed. And I think at the time, if I'd been in a position in 1991 to be buying a new car and I had a very tight budget, I think this Kia Pride might have won my heart, because it's for me, it's quite stylish, it's been relatively nippy around town, and when I'm inside, it feels like an absolute pleasure to drive. And do you know what else? I love a little fun fact when I talk about cars to you. So number one, this was the cheapest car in 1991 to be sold with a catalyst, and number two, this was the last car on the market to be sold with white wall tyres. So yes, very interesting little car, lots of history, and to round up, I think that I would definitely recommend this car to anybody. Yes, they aren't the easiest thing to get hold of, but if you have a chance, it's a great starter classic. They aren't expensive. I believe Jude paid around £500 for this car. It's in great shape, and it's got a really good little they've got a good little owners community building up. So they've got a new Facebook group for Korean cars, and I think that the Korean car movement is really building up, and I think it's becoming a lot more popular. So yes, if you get a chance, go out, buy yourself a retro or a classic Kia, because I think that you'll get a lot of car for your money. They're not the most attractive classics on the market in terms of popularity at the moment, so you'll be buying something that's in much better condition for your money than maybe, say, if you go for a more popular marque. And I think you'll have a lot of fun doing it too, because these cars are very well built, they're fun to drive, and I've been very, very impressed. Guys, I am so sad to hand the keys back to this Pride. I think it would be a great accompaniment to Jill, because I love a little car and I love a little silly car as well. And this has ticked all the boxes for me. It's been great fun. And I think Jude is so lucky to have this as his first car. But I also think he's been quite brave as well, because it's not your standard choice for a 17-year-old to go for a Kia Pride. In fact, I don't know anyone who's ever owned a Kia Pride. Anyway, I'm rambling on. It's time for me to park this lovely car back up and give the keys back to Jude. I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed driving the car today, because it has been one of my more hard-earned test drives, and I think it was worth every penny to get down to London today and drive this. So if you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed driving the car, don't forget to hit like. Any comments you've got or any facts and trivia about Kia Prides, please leave it in the comments section, because you guys know how much I love reading the sometimes excellent information that you give me. And if you're not subscribed already, make sure you hit subscribe, because new classic car videos go up every Wednesday and every Sunday, and I always try to go out and pick something strange or unusual or something a little bit different to make your time well worthwhile. And of course, if you have a classic car, and especially if it's something a little bit off kilter like this Kia Pride, I would love to come and test drive it. So just email idriveaclassic@gmail.com and we can pick it up from there. Now until next time, because it's time for me to pull into the parking bay, take care and drive safely.